Today we're going to make one of these bows that I have used for a hanging kitchen towel. Templates are included in the written instructions and I already have them cut out here. We have 3 pieces. So to start, we're going to just get our bow part of the bow made. That's going to be this front section right here. You have your fabric, you're going to fold it in half. So I have it, long section here, right side's facing up right now. Just fold it in half this way. And I want you to pin it in place. And then you can just go ahead and sew this pinned edge right here. I'm using about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and then meet me back right here in a minute. Once you have that edge sewn, you see you end up with a tube type of piece of fabric. What I want you to do is just to go ahead and roll that tube so that the seam that you just sewed is in about approximately the center of it. It doesn't have to be precise, but just on the one side of it in the middle of the now cylinder tube type thing that we have. Go ahead and pin one of the short edges together so that the edges are in alignment. You can adjust that fabric as you need to, but the biggest thing is you just want that seam near the center there. Now you can go ahead and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew one of these edges closed. Once you have one of the short ends closed, go ahead and turn your material so that the right side of the print is facing outwards. Pay special attention to poke out those corners so that they lay nice and crisp there in the corners. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to tuck inwards these raw edges that we just opened that project through. We're going to tuck them inwards, and then we're going to top stitch that closed. The biggest thing is just to make sure that your corners are, that I would just lay it flat and press it so that you know that the corners are indeed the corners. Since we have the seam, as close to the center as we can, it just makes it so that it's going to lay flat when we do this. So I usually just take my fingers and I fold in the edges and then manipulate the fabric so that the fold is even and pin it in place, and do that for the length of that opening. And then you can go take it to your sewing machine and top stitch that edge secure so that the raw edges stay on the inside of the project. So go ahead and top stitch this part here next. So now that we have the short edge here top stitched, we can just set this piece aside for now, and then take your square piece of fabric, put it right side facing down, and go ahead and fold it into thirds. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly precise, but you just want to make sure that the last fold, the raw edge here, isn't completely against the edge. It's more so maybe like a 1/4 of an inch from the edge of that fold there. And then what you're going to do is just go ahead and pick it up with that raw edge facing up. I'm going to fold it over on itself like this. And I'm just going to sew this together as is on this edge here to put it, make it into another little loop using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now that we have that short edge sewn, you can see our loop is just like this. There's no raw edges showing on the outside of the loop except for this back part here where we just sewn. We're going to just leave that as is, and we'll set it to the side for now. Next then we're going to work on our little sachets, or the little strings that are going to hang out from our bow. Take your fabric that kind of looks like a star and put it so that the wrong side of the fabric is facing your workspace, right side facing up. And you're going to fold it in half this way, matching up your corners, and throw a few pins in there just to keep it in place. What I want you to do now then is to sew around the raw edges using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and leave about, I'd say, a 2-inch section left unsewn so that we can turn the project right side out when we're done. So go ahead and sew around those raw edges now. Once you have that sewn around with your small opening, before we turn it right side out, I want you to go ahead and take a scissors and just snip off the raw edges of these 2 points here. That will help it make more of a point when we flip this project. And so you've trimmed those 2 corners, and then in the center part where this inside corner is, I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to snip up right up until that seam. I'm not going to be very careful not to accidentally cut the seam itself, but just right up to that point. I don't know if you can see that. That way when it flips out, it'll lay nice and flat and it won't be all kinked. Then you can take your piece here and turn it right side out. Once you have it turned most of the way out, go ahead and take I like to use like an unclicked pen or a crochet hook, or if you are very careful, you can use your scissors and just make sure you don't push it all the way through, and just gently push on these corners to make sure that they then extend. And the scissors I think is going to be too sharp. I'm going to have to find something. Hold on. All right, I've got a pen I'm going to use instead. And you can just push out those corners so that they are a little more pointed. And sometimes even that can be a little tricky, but I'll show you what I do in case that's the case for you. You can take a pin and just kind of help, pin it a little bit and then pull it out gently. And that'll help that fabric just extend out a little bit more to give you a little bit more crisp of a corner. See the difference between the two? I had the pin and then that was just my pen, and it looks pretty dull right there. So I'm just going to take this and help that come out a little bit more. There we go. Just being careful not to over pull and rip or wreck the fabric there. And you can see since we snipped that inside thing there, it lays nice and smooth. So now then we're going to this raw edge here where we flip that fabric through, tuck inwards those raw edges, pin them so that they're in alignment with one another, and then just top stitch that little section closed. You can go do that now. All right, now we are ready to assemble our bow. Go ahead and take your little loop here that we have, and I'm just gonna grab my bow part. I'm gonna just squeeze together these sides and then thread it through that loop until it's about halfway through. And then just make sure you straighten out that center loop so it's not folded more than you want it to be. And then this part here, you're going to do the same thing. I'm going to just take this one corner, I'm going to flip this over so that that seam here is showing, and I'm going to tuck this in through there and pull it through. And then make sure that top corner comes through, and that's the back. So then I flip it around and just adjust it to have it lay exactly how I want it to. And really, this is super modifiable. If you're wanting a bigger bow, just start with a bigger rectangle. If you're wanting longer sashes, you can just extend the length of that star shape that we had in the beginning. The last step you're going to want to do is to take by hand, just kind of sew these layers together so that they're secure in there, they don't get moved around when you wash it. But there we have it. There's the bow. So now it's time to attach our bow to our towel, just like I have this one done here already. First thing you want to do is to get your snaps, and you have the back part of the snaps, one for each corner, and then the female and the male part of the snaps. Just make sure you have those so that you're not attaching them and then they don't end up not working because they're not the right pieces. And so here I have my towel laid out flat. I have the right side of the towel facing up, and then the back side, if there's any tags, is facing my workspace. What you're going to want to do is find each, you're going to do one snap in this corner, one in this corner, but one of them is going to be flipped around. I'll explain it here in a minute. So this first corner, I'm going to just insert my little tool here to make that opening. I'm going to put the back part of my snap, so the flat part, I'm going to have that pointing downwards on this side. It doesn't matter what side is which, as long as they're just opposite of each other. And then I'm going to do the other portion of the snap. This one is the female, and get it ready, and then use my little tool here for snaps to secure it here on itself. Okay, so that's done. And then on the other side, it's going to just be opposite. So same corner. I'm not worrying too much of placement there. I just have it near the corner. The flat part of the snap, the back of the snap now is going to be on the underside of the towel. And then this is my male part of the snap, goes on this other side, and I will secure it. All right, so those are connected. So just to make sure that works out okay, it's gonna go like that, so that'll be perfect there. Now to attach your bow, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna make sure that, how do I wanna word this? It's gonna be at a 45-degree angle from the fabric and not straight up and down this way. Otherwise, if it's straight up and down, when you have the towel wrapped around the bar, it's a little bit of at an angle, so then your bow is gonna be crooked. So what you're gonna do, find the snap that has the flat edge of the snap facing up, and you're gonna place your bow at a 45-degree angle right over that top of that snap. I'd pin it in place and then stitch it in place by hand, so that the bottom of the bow, so you can see the points to the bow, are facing the edge of the towel, okay? If you had it the other way, it's gonna be upside down when you're using your towel. So go ahead and stitch that in place by hand now. I would use, just come in from the back here and just use some whip stitches and make sure you get all the layers of the bow so that it just washes that much better and it stays nice and secure. And that's it. I hope you would enjoy this tutorial. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the station.